The wind howls across the endless steppe of 12th century Mongolia, a brutal and unforgiving sea of grass where survival is never guaranteed. This is not a land of castles and kings. It is a land of tribes, locked in endless cycles of raid and revenge, where loyalty is fleeting and violence is the only universal language. And into this world, around the year 1162, a boy is born. His name is Temujin, and his first gift is a fistful of blood. Legend says he entered the world clutching a blood clot in his tiny hand, an omen the shamans would have interpreted as a sign of a great and brutal destiny. But before he was a conqueror, he was a victim. His father, a minor chieftain, is poisoned by a rival tribe. With their protector gone, his family is cast out, abandoned by their own clan, left to die on the plains. They are reduced to the most desperate existence, digging for roots, hunting rats, stealing scraps to avoid starvation. Young Temujin even kills his own half-brother in a fight over a single fish, a stark early lesson in the harsh economy of survival. This is the crucible that forged Genghis Khan, not in a palace, but in the dirt. This is where he learned his first and most important lesson. Trust no one but yourself. Alliances shatter, family betrays you. The world is merciless. The boy who was left to die on the steppe would never, ever be weak again. He would learn the rules of his world, and then he would break them. This is the origin story of history's greatest conqueror, a saga that began not with an army, but with an outcast fighting just to see the next sunrise. Temujin was no longer the starving outcast. He was a leader, uniting the fractured Mongol tribes not through gentle diplomacy, but through sheer force of will, cunning, and a revolutionary new vision. But to transform these fierce, independent clans into a single, unstoppable force, he needed more than loyalty. He needed a system. He built the most efficient military machine the ancient world had ever seen. Forget everything you know about medieval warfare. This wasn't about heavily armored knights clashing on a battlefield. The Mongol way of war was faster, smarter, and utterly ruthless. It started with the horse. Every Mongol warrior grew up in the saddle. Their horses were extensions of themselves. They could ride for days, covering staggering distances, living on mare's milk and blood tapped from their own steeds. They were a storm that appeared out of nowhere. Their signature weapon was the composite bow. Crafted from layers of sinew, horn, and wood, it was smaller than an English longbow, but far more powerful, and it could be fired with devastating accuracy from a galloping horse. They were the deadliest archers in history, but their true weapon was their strategy. Temujin, now Genghis Khan, abolished the old tradition of promoting leaders by noble birth. In his army, command was earned through skill and merit alone. A talented shepherd could rise to lead 1,000 warriors. This created an army led by the best, not the most privileged. They mastered the art of the feigned retreat, luring enemy armies into chaotic chases before suddenly wheeling around to annihilate them. They used psychological warfare, employing spies to spread terror about their numbers and their cruelty long before they arrived at a city's gates. They were experts in siege warfare, adopting and improving upon technologies from conquered engineers to tear down walls that had stood for centuries. This was not a mindless horde. It was a precision instrument, honed on the harsh steppes and directed by the strategic genius of one man. The world, comfortable in its old ways of war, was about to be shattered by a new kind of army. The storm was gathering, and it was about to be unleashed. Conquest was only the beginning. Genghis Khan now faced an impossible question. How do you rule the world? He had shattered empires from China to Persia, but a mountain of rubble is not an empire. To avoid having his vast new territories collapse into chaos, he had to build something that had never existed before. And so, the Great Killer became history's most unlikely revolutionary. His first radical idea: religious tolerance. In an age of crusades and holy wars, the Mongol Empire was a startling exception. Genghis Khan issued a decree. All religions were to be respected. Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, and Taoists could all worship freely under his rule. Why? Not out of kindness, but out of brilliant strategy. He knew religious strife was a waste of energy and a threat to stability. By protecting all faiths, he ensured the loyalty of his diverse subjects and turned potential rebels into taxpayers. His second innovation: meritocracy. In the Mongol administration, your family name didn't matter. What mattered was what you could do. A captured Persian scribe could rise to become a high administrator, A Chinese engineer who once built weapons to use against the Mongols was put in charge of building siege engines for them. Talent was recruited, not born. This was a system designed to absorb the best ideas from every culture they conquered. At the heart of it all was the Yasa, his legal code. It was brutal. Theft could be punishable by death, but it was also shockingly fair. It protected the poor from arbitrary taxation by greedy local lords. It guaranteed safe passage for merchants along the revitalized Silk Road. For perhaps the first time in history, a traveler could journey from the Pacific Ocean to the Black Sea with a gold tablet bearing the Great Khan's seal, knowing they were under the protection of the most powerful government on Earth. This was the hidden engine of the Mongol Empire. Not just terror, but order. Not just taking, but building. Genghis Khan didn't just conquer the world, he connected it. He created a single, massive zone of trade, communication, and ideas that would later be called the Pax Mongolica. The world was about to discover that the man who built his empire with the sword would rule it with a set of rules. For all its revolutionary policies and stunning innovations, the Mongol Empire was built on a foundation of almost unimaginable violence. The same strategic genius that created history's largest land empire also engineered some of history's most efficient massacres. This is the dark duality of Genghis Khan, the visionary ruler who was also, by any modern measure, a perpetrator of genocide. When a city resisted, the punishment was not just defeat, it was utter erasure. After conquering Urgench and Khwarezm, the Mongols diverted an entire river to flow over the ruins, wiping it from the map. In Nishapur, where his son-in-law was killed, Genghis Khan ordered a massacre so complete that not even cats or dogs were to be left alive. Towers of human skulls became the grim calling cards of the Mongol advance, psychological weapons designed to terrify the next city into surrender without a fight. The death toll remains staggering even by conservative estimates. Historians believe the Mongol conquest may have killed up to 40 million people, approximately 10% of the entire world's population at that time. In some regions of China and Persia, the population didn't recover to pre-Mongol levels for over a century. This wasn't just warfare, it was demographic catastrophe. Beyond the human cost, the environmental impact was equally profound. The Mongols practiced what modern strategists would call scorched earth warfare on an epic scale. Agricultural lands were systematically destroyed, irrigation systems shattered, and forests cleared to eliminate hiding places for enemies. Some scholars argue that the dramatic reduction in human population and agriculture during this period actually led to a temporary cooling of the global climate, as forests regrew on abandoned farmland and absorbed carbon from the atmosphere. Yet even this darkness contained paradoxes. The same destruction that wiped out civilizations also cleared the way for new ones. The elimination of existing power structures allowed the Mongols to implement their revolutionary systems of administration and trade. The very terror that made their name synonymous with brutality also created the stability of the Pax Mongolica. Genghis Khan's legacy remains history's most challenging riddle. Can unprecedented cultural exchange and progress justify unprecedented human suffering? The answer depends on whether you were one of the merchants traveling safely along the Silk Road, or one of the millions who became a skull in one of the Khan's pyramids. In the year 2003, a groundbreaking genetic study revealed a shocking discovery, one that would forever change how we understand the legacy of Genghis Khan. Researchers found a specific Y chromosome sequence present in nearly 0.5% of the world's male population, roughly 16 million men alive today. Tracing its origins, they reached a startling conclusion. This genetic marker could be traced back to a single man who lived in Mongolia around 1,000 years ago. That man was Genghis Khan. How did this happen? The answer lies in a combination of Mongol customs and the sheer scale of Khan's empire. As the Mongols expanded, Khan and his male descendants often took multiple wives and concubines from conquered territories. His sons and grandsons continued this practice, creating a vast network of descendants carrying his unique genetic signature. This was not merely a cultural phenomenon. It was a biological empire built through procreation. But genes were not the only thing the Mongols spread. The stability of the Pax Mongolica, the period of peace and order under Mongol rule, enabled unprecedented movement of people, goods, and ideas across Eurasia. The Silk Road flourished under Mongol protection, allowing not only silk and spices to travel, but also technologies like papermaking, gunpowder, and the compass, innovations that would later fuel the European Renaissance. Yet the empire's sheer size also became its weakness. After Genghis Khan's death, his vast domain was divided among his sons, leading to gradual fragmentation. The Black Death in the 14th century further weakened Mongol control, devastating populations and trade routes alike. The empire that had connected continents eventually crumbled, but its influence endured in the boundaries, cultures, and genetic makeup of modern nations. Today, Genghis Khan's legacy is everywhere, not only in the DNA of millions, but in the interconnected world he helped create. From the spread of technologies to the redrawing of geopolitical landscapes, his impact is a reminder that history is not just shaped by wars and treaties, but by the unseen, relentless forces of human movement, ambition, and chance. He was more than a conqueror. He was a catalyst of the modern world,